Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Grace Alone. My name is Andrew Wilson, and today we'll be talking about four different perspectives on the topic of sovereignty and election in the Bible. There are four different main perspectives. I've been studying this a lot recently, so I wanted to share with you what I've discovered, that there are four different views. At the very end, I'll tell you my own very briefly. This will be a much briefer episode, as you know, the ones where it's just me, briefer, just to kind of give you something to think about. And then we have a lot of guests planned for the future, but um, I won't announce those yet because we haven't scheduled all of them exactly. But hopefully we have a lot of good guests coming up for you, and that's the plan. So let's get started. Today, the first view is what is known as, some would call it the synergistic position, or the monergism position. I can't remember the synergism monergism thing, but the what is mostly known as the Reformed position, the Calvinist position, which is unconditional election, which says that before the foundations of the world, God chose by His grace alone and through His Son alone, who would be saved. But not only did He just decide that, and that's, he just knows it. It's not that. He allows them to come to Him through His grace and power. So He has more of a work than just that first part, right? It's more like we see in Romans 8. He does the electing, but he also does the calling. He does the drawing, he does the everything in the process. So that's the Reformed position. The second position is also known as the Arminian position, which says that God looked down the corridors of time, saw who would be saved, and He just knows, right? So essentially, what that says is that man chose first, because there's this idea that, well, man chose first because God saw who would choose him first. So that is that view. The third view is the view that I grew up hearing a lot, was this idea that all the election in the Bible is talking about conforming to the image of a son. So the election is for everybody once you're saved, which God knows but doesn't at the same time. It's a very confusing way, but knows but doesn't. And he he has a plan for everyone. So he elected that everyone would just be conformed to the image of his son, and that's the plan. But still, it's not really set in because he's still the free will thing. It's very confusing to me. The fourth view, and the one I'm surrounded by the most, and unfortunately the most confusing to me, is the one that says that the electing in Romans 9, Ephesians 1, is talking about, you know, Jacob and Esau, and not Pharaoh, and certain people in the Old Testament, essentially a history lesson. Let's just take Romans 9, for example. In all of Romans, we hear about salvation and how it works. And somehow in Romans 9, it skips to a history lesson. I don't think so. Now, that's not how it seems to me, anyway. It seems to me that that is just a way, again, to get around a doctrine that makes you uncomfortable. I've often said that where I grew up is God is sovereign, except for where it makes us uncomfortable. Like, is God sovereign and evil? Well, no. Well, they'll say, no, that's the devil's. Well, the devil causes evil, but God allows it. See, they don't want to say that because it makes them uncomfortable. Election is another one of those things. It makes them extremely uncomfortable to say that God that God would choose certain and not others. See, the Bible's clear on this. I believe it's clear, and that's the first view, which is the Reformed view. And I'm not saying you have to come to be a Christian or anything. I just believe that's what the Bible teaches. Now, I also think it comes down to the total depravity of man. How sinful do you think man is? Can man just choose in his mind to follow God? But all these people who say that still believe he can stay and God can keep him. So why can't he do the first work and only do the second? See, if you're a consistent Arminian, you'll come to the position that you can lose your salvation, which puts no hope. If you're a consistent Calvinist, as I believe I am, and I'm not consistent in everything, but I try to be. And in everything I believe, I try to be consistent. I believe that God keeps us because he saves us. It's quite simple, in my opinion. Again, the one that doesn't make the most sense to me is this idea that the election was only for the Old Testament and for service. In fact, some I've heard are so uncomfortable with this doctrine, they call it selection, because they're so uncomfortable with it. Again, God is sovereign whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. That's something to chew on for this week's episode. Sorry about last week. I was out of town in West Virginia and I forgot to make an announcement that I'd be gone. I'll be back next week, and tomorrow will be with the YouTube devotional. All right, I'll see you. Peace.